Lightning tore across the stormy sky, cracking the clouds above the floating palace. Rain lashed sideways, drenching the marble terraces, while the distant rumble of collapsing stone echoed like thunder from below. On the edge of the upper balcony, a small, translucent creature struggled to move. Its tiny wings quivered useless. Its limbs were stiff, paralyzed, leaving it teetering dangerously close to the chasm below. Panic radiated from its glowing eyes, and yet no one dared approach. Guards shouted orders, but fear froze them. Even their advanced anti-human exosuits trembled under the storm's power. Amira, a human maid, crouched behind a marble pillar, heart pounding in her chest. She had no weapons, no authority, and no one to protect her, but something inside her screamed. This fragile creature, this child of a mighty dragon king, was about to fall. Without thinking, she lunged forward, racing across the slick marble. Lightning illuminated her path, her wet hair clinging to her face. She dove, hands outstretched. The child's body quivered as she caught it mid-fall. Its translucent skin rippled with faint pulses of light, almost like it was alive in a way no human had ever seen. Amira hugged it close to her chest, feeling the strange vibrations against her body. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Then the balcony beneath them cracked with a deafening roar. The stone groaned, giving way. She scrambled backward, sliding on wet marble, gripping the creature tighter, trying not to scream. "Hold on. Don't let go," she muttered, more to herself than to anyone else. Her foot slipped, nearly sending both of them over the edge. Using sheer determination, she kicked off a crumbling support beam and landed on a lower platform with a jolt. The creature's wings flickered weakly as if trying to help but unable. Its eyes widened, staring up at her with something like recognition. Amira realized, with a mixture of awe and fear, that the child was aware of her presence. It was responding to her. Guards rushed closer, but she didn't stop. They raised their weapons, and a beam of energy sizzled past her shoulder. She ducked instinctively, weaving between pillars. Each pulse of lightning highlighted the child's tiny form, trembling against her. Somehow she had to reach safety. The storm's wind tried to pry her arms apart, the rain threatened to blind her, and yet she moved faster than any human should be able to. She spotted a maintenance ladder leading to a partially covered service balcony. It was a narrow, slick route, but it was their only chance. Step by careful step, she carried the child along the edge, sliding under a falling fragment of stone, narrowly dodging a bolt of electrical energy that leapt from a nearby tower. Every heartbeat brought the risk of a fatal fall, but she pressed on, adrenaline sharpening her senses. The child whimpered, a soft, almost musical sound, and Amira realized it wasn't just fear. The pulses along its limbs reacted to her grip, vibrating in a rhythm she instinctively echoed in her own breathing. She hummed quietly, a simple melody, and the child's wings twitched. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, it flexed its tiny limbs. She felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, it could help them reach safety. Behind them, the guards were shouting, frustrated at her audacity. The Dragon King himself appeared atop a higher terrace, eyes blazing with fury. His wings stretched wide, enormous and gleaming, lightning reflecting off his scales. "Human," his voice thundered, echoing across the storm. "Do you dare touch my child?" Amira didn't answer. She focused on each step, each precarious balance, each pulse of light from the child in her arms. She had no plan beyond moving forward, but courage and instinct guided her. Another column shattered beneath them, sending stone debris clattering across the platform. She flinched, feeling a fragment scrape her arm, but she refused to let go. Every second counted. The child suddenly stirred more violently, its wings beating in frantic, uneven pulses. It flung off a bolt of pure energy toward a collapsing wall, knocking it aside and creating a tiny pocket of safety. Amira gasped. She hadn't realized the child could affect the environment, just by trying. Her heart raced. Could this fragile creature be more powerful than anyone realized? A deafening crack split the air. The service balcony ahead was starting to crumble under the storm's weight. Amira's eyes widened. She knew she couldn't stop, it was the only way forward. She glanced down at the child. Its glowing eyes met hers, and for a heartbeat she saw trust, gratitude, and an unspoken plea. With a sudden surge of determination, Amira sprinted the last few steps. The balcony quivered violently, threatening to collapse under her weight. She leapt, landing awkwardly, tumbling onto the safety of a wider platform. Rain soaked her completely, hair plastered to her face, body trembling. The child clung to her chest, wings fluttering weakly. She looked up. The Dragon King's roar of anger filled the storm, but for the first time she saw hesitation in his eyes. Amira exhaled, chest heaving, soaked and trembling, and whispered, "We made it, but this isn't over." Above them, the storm still raged, but something in the child shifted, its light pulsing faster, brighter. Amira felt it. Something was awakening, something beyond anything she could understand. And then, with a flash of blinding energy, the platform beneath them trembled violently, sending a shower of sparks into the rain. Amira gripped the child tighter, heart racing. The storm had not yet released its final danger. The rain pounded harder as Amira ducked behind a shattered column, clutching the trembling creature to her chest. Lightning flashed across the palace, illuminating the chaos, guards scrambling over broken marble, warning sirens blaring through the halls, and distant crashes as portions of the terrace collapsed into the stormy void below. Each step was a risk. The slippery floors threatened to send her and the child plummeting. Yet, Amira refused to hesitate. One misstep could end both their lives, and she couldn't let fear decide. Ahead, a massive iron gate blocked their path. The palace elevators were sealed, and every corridor seemed rigged with traps. She peered around the edge, calculating quickly. The guards were closing in, their anti-human energy beams crackling dangerously close. She counted their positions, then sprinted, zigzagging to avoid the lines of fire. Every movement had a cost. One miscalculation, one slip on the wet marble, and she would fall. But instinct guided her, honed by years of dodging hazards no one expected a maid to survive. The creature stirred in her arms, wings flickering weakly, sending tiny arcs of light into her hands. Amira froze for a moment. Its pulses reacted only to her touch, a strange rhythm that seemed intelligent. She hummed a soft tune, just a note or two, and watched as the wings trembled with a faint lift. The child could not move properly yet, but it was trying. A surge of hope spurred her onward. If she could keep its energy synchronized with hers, maybe it could help them escape. She darted down a narrow corridor lined with massive statues of winged dragons, their eyes glowing faintly in the stormlight. One guard stepped into her path, wielding a stun rod. Amira spun, using her body as a shield for the child, and kicked a fragment of marble straight at the guard's legs. He stumbled, giving her a second to vault past, sliding against the wall with the child tucked tight. She winced as the child whimpered softly, but the pulse of its tiny energy vibrated through her, reassuring her. Somehow it was aware she was protecting it. Then came the worst sound, a loud metallic clang from above. A portion of the ceiling had collapsed and a rain-soaked steel beam fell toward them. Amira dove instinctively, rolling across the floor, smashing her shoulder into the wall. Pain shot through her arm, but she gritted her teeth and held the child tighter. The beam landed just inches from where she had been. The guards shouted, confused by her sudden disappearance. Adrenaline coursed through her veins, sharpening every sense. Every second, every heartbeat mattered. Ahead, a maintenance ladder climbed precariously along the wall, leading to a service balcony that might be safe, or at least safer than the collapsing corridors. Amira ran toward it, dragging her soaked shoes along the slick floor. Her grip on the child never wavered. Lightning illuminated the child's translucent wings, now faintly glowing with a stronger pulse. The energy had intensified when she hummed again. Her heart leapt. Could this fragile being actually help her escape? She risked the experiment, mimicking the rhythm, matching her breathing to the child's pulses. Slowly, it flexed its wings again, just enough to shift its body weight slightly. The balcony trembled under their combined energy, giving her a boost for the final leap. She made it halfway up the ladder when a beam of energy sizzled past her shoulder. Amira froze, holding her breath. The guard's aim was precise, but her quick reflexes saved them. She twisted sideways, letting the beam strike the ladder just beneath her, sending sparks flying. The creature shrieked, wings fluttering violently, but Amira whispered, "It's okay. We'll make it." She climbed faster, each rung slick with rain, muscles burning. The guards were now on both sides, closing the gap, their shouts echoing over the storm. Finally they reached the service balcony. It was narrow and unstable, but it offered a chance. Amira set the child down gently, holding its tiny body against hers as they both caught their breath. For a moment, they were just two beings huddled together amid chaos, hearts racing, drenched and exhausted. She looked at the child and noticed a faint glow spreading from its wings, brighter than before, almost as if it recognized her courage. "Can you help me?" she whispered. The child twitched slightly, sending a flicker of light toward a collapsing portion of the balcony. The energy jolted the falling debris just enough to create a narrow path forward. Amira's eyes widened. The child was trying to act, to protect them. The realization hit her like a thunderclap. This small being, paralyzed and fragile, might actually hold the key to their survival. Before she could react further, a shadow loomed above them. The Dragon King himself descended from a higher terrace, enormous wings stretched wide, scales reflecting the storm's light. His roar shattered the pattering rain, echoing through the halls. Guards froze at his presence, unsure whether to follow protocol or obey their sovereign. Amira felt her stomach twist. This confrontation could mean death, but she didn't flinch. She tightened her hold on the child and stood tall, drenched and trembling, ready to face what no one else dared. The king's eyes blazed with fury, his massive claws scraping against the marble edge. "Human," he thundered. "Do you dare touch my child?" Amira didn't answer. She simply stepped forward, instincts and courage guiding her. The child's glow intensified, wings beating faster in tiny, frantic bursts. Amira felt the pulses, matching them, channeling their fragile energy into a rhythm that steadied both their breaths. Somehow, in this storm of lightning, fear and fury, she realized they were no longer just running from danger, they were creating a chance to survive. Then, without warning, the balcony trembled violently beneath them, the structure groaning as if it might give way at any moment. Rain hissed against the stone, wind screamed through the torn corridors, and the child's light flared brighter than ever. Amira gripped it tighter, heart hammering. The Dragon King loomed above, fury etched into every scale, but this was no longer just about fear or authority. Something far greater, far more dangerous, was awakening. Amira whispered through clenched teeth, "We're not finished yet." The balcony shuddered once more. A deep crack split the stone beneath her boots and the world seemed to tilt. The storm had not released its final threat, and the next step, one she could not yet see, would decide everything. Amira pressed the child tightly to her chest as the service balcony trembled beneath their feet. The rain continued to lash, a cold, stinging curtain that blurred vision and soaked every inch of her clothes. Lightning illuminated the vast drop below, reminding her of how close she had come to plummeting into the endless stormlit void. Every instinct screamed to run, to find shelter, but she knew that wouldn't work. The Dragon King's presence above, massive wings stretched and eyes blazing, meant there was no hiding. She had to act and fast. She moved along the balcony, careful to step only on sections that hadn't already cracked. The child's wings flickered, radiating pulses of light stronger than before. Amira had noticed a pattern. Whenever she synchronized her breathing with the child's, the glow intensified. It was almost like the creature understood her, like it trusted her. She whispered softly, "We'll get through this. I promise." The child's tiny body twitched, sending a pulse that felt almost like a heartbeat against her hands. Ahead, a service hatch led into the palace's inner lab, a place forbidden to most, even humans. Amira's mind raced. If she could reach the lab, maybe she could find shelter or perhaps something that would help the child. But the guards were closing in, their energy weapons cutting through the storm's mist. Amira weighed her options. A direct confrontation would be suicide. Yet the hatch was locked, and the key code was clearly known only to the palace's elite. The child's glow pulsed more urgently, wings twitching as if signaling a path. Amira hesitated for a moment, then made a snap decision. She pressed the child's tiny chest against her own and let instinct guide her. Matching the rhythm of its pulses, she traced an unfamiliar pattern along the keypad. A soft click echoed and the hatch slid open. Amira's eyes widened in shock. The child's latent energy, barely perceptible before, had somehow helped her unlock the door. She gasped, realizing that this tiny fragile being was more than a helpless child. It held powers that the palace itself feared. Inside, the lab was a chaos of broken glass, overturned equipment and leaking conduits. Machines hummed weakly under the storm's interference. Amira stepped carefully, dragging the child with her. She scanned the room looking for anything that could help. On one counter she found a small containment field, partially powered. She placed the child inside briefly, observing as the pulsing light from its wings seemed to interface with the machinery. The field amplified the glow, stabilizing the child's frail limbs. Amira realized, with a mixture of fear and awe, that the child's energy could interact with technology. She whispered, "You're incredible, but we need to move before they catch us." Suddenly, a shadow fell across the lab doorway. Amira's stomach dropped. The Dragon King himself stepped through, massive, intimidating, and impossibly fast. His eyes blazed with anger, but there was hesitation there too, a flicker she hadn't expected. "Human," he growled, voice like rolling thunder, Why do you interfere with my child? Amira tightened her grip on the child as the king advanced. Your child is hurt. You're risking its life by keeping it paralyzed, she shouted over the storm. Her voice trembled, but her resolve did not. The Dragon King froze, startled at her audacity. Humans were rarely bold enough to speak like this, much less confront royalty. The child stirred violently, wings beating in short, rapid pulses, casting arcs of light across the lab. It shrieked, not in fear but in warning. Amira realized it was defending her. When the king reached out, the energy surged outward, forming a faint shield that knocked him back slightly. His massive claws scraped the floor, leaving deep gouges in the metal tiles, but he paused, eyes narrowing. The child had recognized her bravery and loyalty. It wasn't just a helpless creature, it had chosen her. Amira took a deep breath. It trusts me, she said softly, because I care. Because I understand it. The king's expression flickered between fury and curiosity. No human had ever spoken with such conviction. For a heartbeat, the storm outside seemed to quiet, as if nature itself was waiting for what would happen next. Then the child's wings flared suddenly, projecting a faint, shimmering map into the air. Amira blinked in disbelief. Lines, symbols, and glowing points traced across the holographic projection, revealing a distant sector in orbit around the planet. Something was coming, something huge. A fleet? A weapon? She didn't know yet. But the child's energy had detected it. The king's roar of frustration shook the lab. What trickery is this? He bellowed. But Amira realized it wasn't trickery. The child had powers the palace did not fully understand, powers it had suppressed for its own safety. And now it was showing them a threat that no one else could see. Amira's mind raced. If she could convince the king to listen, maybe they could act together to protect the palace and the child. But fear and pride made him slow to trust her. She clenched her fists, determination blazing. Humans might be small and fragile, but they were capable of courage and quick thinking, even under impossible odds. She had no time for hesitation. Listen, she said, voice steady despite the storm and the king's looming presence. This is bigger than us, bigger than you or me. The child can help us, but only if we act together. If we waste time, everything here could fall. The king's gaze flicked between Amira and the child. Slowly, the tension in his stance lessened, replaced by a mixture of curiosity and cautious respect. Amira realized she had done the impossible. Not only had she survived, she had shown that human courage and empathy could command attention, even from a dragon king. But as the storm outside battered the palace, the projection of the approaching threat pulsed brighter. Amira's chest tightened. They had only just survived the immediate danger. A far greater challenge was looming, one that neither human nor dragon could face alone. Amira looked down at the child. Its wings trembled against her arms, glowing like living fire. She whispered, "We're not done yet, and this is only the beginning." Lightning struck again, closer this time, shaking the palace foundations. The floor beneath them shuddered, loose panels cracking, and the lab's energy conduits sparked dangerously. The next step was unclear, but one thing was certain. The storm outside was nothing compared to the storm that had just begun inside the palace, and the real danger was only starting to reveal itself. The sky above the floating palace roared with fury. Thunder cracked and rain lashed sideways, drumming against the shattered terraces. The storm was fierce, but outside it, a new threat appeared. A fleet of massive alien ships, dark and angular, slicing through the clouds toward the palace. Amira's heart pounded. She had barely survived the palace itself, and now the world was about to erupt in chaos around them. "Get the child to safety," she shouted, urgency shaking her voice. The small creature in her arms quivered, wings flickering with pulsing light that grew stronger with each passing second. Its energy reacted to her determination. Amira realized that for all its fragility, it was not defenseless. It could amplify her actions if she acted decisively. The Dragon King hovered near the balcony edge, wings stretched wide, scales glinting in the stormlight. His massive claws flexed and he snarled, sending a gust of wind that threatened to knock Amira off her feet. "This human dares to interfere again?" he bellowed. "She cannot possibly understand the danger." Amira did not flinch. Instead, she scanned the lab where she had taken refuge. Broken energy conduits hung from the ceiling, sparking violently. Machines groaned under the stress of the storm and the approaching fleet. She spotted a control panel with exposed circuits and blinking lights. It was risky, almost certain death, but if she could manipulate the palace defenses using the child's energy, they might stand a chance. She set the child down briefly on a small ledge and reached for the panel. Sparks flew across her arm as she touched the damaged circuits, but she ignored the pain. Her mind worked quickly, analyzing patterns in the flickering energy, integrating the child's pulses. The child reacted instinctively, its wings lifting, sending arcs of energy that fused with the palace's defensive systems. A hum of power surged through the room, and a beam of light shot upward, targeting one of the alien ships approaching from the clouds. Amira's eyes widened as the beam connected. The ship wobbled, its shields flickering under the force of the unexpected counterattack. She realized the child's energy was not just reactive, it could amplify and direct technology beyond human design. Together they could fight back. But there was no time to celebrate. Another ship fired a pulse of energy toward the palace. The walls shook violently, sending shards of marble and stone raining down. Amira ducked, shielding the child against her chest. Sparks jumped from the control panel, catching the floor on fire. The child's wings flared, striking a second defensive pulse, and the fire hissed out. A small success, a tiny victory, but a victory nonetheless. The Dragon King's roar filled the storm. He moved beside her, massive wings whipping the rain into blinding sheets. He grabbed one of the smaller intruder ships with his claws, hurling it against another. Yet, his movements alone couldn't stop the onslaught. Amira understood this. Brute force would not win the day. Intelligence, courage, and decisive action were required, and humans had both in ways dragons did not expect. A third ship broke through the storm, aiming directly at the lab. Amira leapt, using the child's energy to propel herself toward a nearby control console. She punched in a sequence, sending a wave of energy spiraling through the palace's defense grid. The child's wings trembled violently, almost straining against its own limits, but it responded to her will. The energy beam struck the approaching ship, ripping it apart in a flash of fire and smoke. Amira gasped, adrenaline pumping, realizing the child's latent power was a force to be reckoned with. But she could feel the toll on its tiny body. The wings glowed brighter, energy pulsing through every vein. She whispered encouragements, synchronizing her breath with its rhythm, guiding it through the dangerous task. Together they were more than human and dragon, they were a single force. Then a massive jolt shook the lab. The ceiling cracked, sending steel beams crashing toward them. Amira shoved the child aside, rolling just in time to avoid being crushed. Sparks erupted everywhere, and the floor trembled violently. The Dragon King, hovering near the doorway, grabbed her hand and propelled them both out just as the lab collapsed behind them. The wind tore at their clothes, but Amira's grip on the child never wavered. Outside, the storm and the invasion collided in a chaotic symphony of sound and energy. Alien ships streaked through the air, their pulses meeting the palace's defensive beams. Amira and the Dragon King hovered above the terrace. She could see the child beginning to lift, its wings fully unfurling for the first time. Pulses of bright energy radiated outward, not just defensive but offensive, striking multiple ships simultaneously. The child's power, paired with her strategic guidance, was turning the tide. A surge of exhilaration and fear swept through Amira. This was the moment humans could shine, courage, intelligence, and compassion overcoming impossible odds. Yet she knew the danger was far from over. Every action she took drew new threats, new complications. And the alien fleet had only begun its attack. The Dragon King's eyes softened slightly as he watched her work. Perhaps humans were not so small, so insignificant as he had once believed. Here, amid chaos and storm, Amira's bravery and ingenuity were undeniable. Then the unexpected happened. One of the ships emitted a high-frequency pulse directly at the child. Its wings flickered wildly, light dimming. Amira felt panic rise. She realized they had underestimated the enemy. The child was vulnerable despite its power, and if it fell, the palace would be lost. Amira grabbed the child tighter, shouting commands over the storm. "Focus. We can't let them win." The child responded, wings glowing brighter in defiance, channeling its energy into a defensive dome that shimmered across the terrace. The pulse from the enemy ship struck, ricocheted, and scattered harmlessly into the storm clouds. A small victory, yes, but the battle was far from over. As the alien fleet regrouped above, preparing another assault, Amira looked at the Dragon King. He nodded once, a silent agreement passing between them. Together they could hold the line, but they could not wait. She felt the weight of responsibility, the enormity of the challenge, yet her courage remained unshaken. Humans might be small, fragile, and underestimated, but in moments like this, courage and intelligence could change the course of history. And then, in the midst of the chaos, The child's wings pulsed violently again, this time forming a swirling, blinding light above the palace. Amira felt an odd, electric hum vibrating through her bones. Something far larger than the alien fleet was awakening, a presence approaching from deep space, pulsing with energy unlike anything she had ever seen. Her breath caught. The immediate battle was only the beginning. The storm outside was nothing compared to what was coming. She gripped the child tighter, ready for whatever impossible odds awaited them next. Amira clutched the child tightly as the swirling storm above the palace seemed to pause for a heartbeat, the rain lashing sideways, turning marble terraces into rivers of water. The alien fleet hovered just beyond the clouds, their dark ships bristling with energy weapons. But for the moment, the child's pulsing light created a protective dome over the palace, shimmering and alive. Amira could feel it resonate through her hands and chest, and she realized something astonishing. This fragile creature, once paralyzed and helpless, now trusted her completely, and it would fight for her as much as she had fought for it. The Dragon King hovered beside her, massive wings cutting through the storm, eyes never leaving the fleet above. Yet there was a hint of something Amira hadn't expected: respect. He had seen her courage, her quick thinking, her willingness to risk everything to save his child. For the first time he seemed to understand that humans were not just fragile servants or observers. They could act decisively, bravely, and morally, even when facing impossible odds. Amira took a deep breath, calming herself despite the chaos. "We have to finish this," she said, voice steady though her heart hammered. "We can't just survive. We need to protect the palace and the child and everyone inside." The child's wings pulsed, sending arcs of energy into the defensive systems of the palace. Machines she had patched together with quick improvisation hummed and surged, projecting beams of energy that struck the incoming ships, scattering several into smoke and fire. The alien fleet fired back, and one massive vessel aimed directly at the palace's central tower. Amira's stomach twisted, but she didn't hesitate. Using the control panel she had stabilized earlier, she guided the child's energy to amplify the palace's core defensive matrix. Sparks flew, metal groaned, and for a tense second, it seemed the system would overload. She clenched her teeth, focusing on rhythm and pulse, matching her breathing to the child's wings. Then, with a flash, the palace emitted a beam of pure light, striking the vessel with pinpoint precision. It exploded in the storm, scattering debris and shaking the air. A cheer, or something like it, escaped Amira's lips even over the storm. But there was no time to celebrate. The child trembled violently in her arms, wings flickering as if warning her. She realized that though they had survived this wave of attack, the child had exerted immense energy. Its small body was at the limit. Amira whispered encouragements, synchronizing once more, lending her own resolve to its fragile strength. Somehow, this connection between human and child had turned desperation into power. The Dragon King finally landed beside them on the terrace, claws pressing into wet marble. "You have done what none of my guards could," he said, voice low and awe-filled. "You have shown courage and wisdom. Humans are not to be underestimated." Amira's breath caught. Respect from a being of his magnitude was rare, almost unimaginable. She nodded, glancing down at the child. Its glow was steadier now, stronger, as if acknowledging her guidance. But then a deep vibration rolled through the palace, unlike any thunder she had felt before. The very walls seemed to hum, and the light from the child's wings flickered sharply. Amira's eyes widened. Looking up, she saw it, a massive, glowing object emerging from orbit, pulsing with energy that dwarfed the alien fleet below. Its size and intensity made the storm look small by comparison. She felt her stomach drop. This was no ordinary threat. The invasion fleet had been just the beginning, a test, perhaps, or a distraction. The Dragon King's wings lifted, sending a gust that pushed back rain and debris. He glanced at Amira, then at the child, eyes narrowing. "It begins," he said. "Something older, more powerful, approaches. None of us have faced this before." Amira swallowed hard. Her hands tightened on the child. She had already faced impossible odds, but this was something she could not yet comprehend. Despite the fear, a determination surged through her. Humans were small, fragile, and often underestimated, but they had a spark no alien could fully predict. Courage, empathy, and quick thinking had saved a paralyzed child, had turned the tide against the invading fleet, and now perhaps they could face this greater threat. She looked down at the child's glowing wings and whispered, "We'll face it together. Whatever comes, we won't back down." The child's light pulsed in agreement, wings trembling in a rhythm that mirrored her heartbeat. The palace was quiet, momentarily, the storm having lost some of its fury, but the tension remained. Guards began regrouping, cautiously peering over terraces, while alarms continued to wail. Amira stepped forward to the edge, looking out at the massive object now fully revealed above the horizon. It radiated energy in waves that seemed almost alive, like it was aware of the beings below. Her mind raced. How could a Maid, influence what was coming? And yet, she realized that courage and quick thinking were more powerful than she had ever imagined. The Dragon King hovered closer, massive wings cutting the wind, and nodded. Humans, you may be the key to survival after all. Amira's chest tightened, and for the first time she felt the weight of what lay ahead. The immediate battle had been won, yes, but this was only the beginning. Her heart raced, but there was no hesitation. She had faced the storm, the collapsing palace, and an invading fleet. She could face whatever was coming next. A sudden pulse of light shot from the approaching object, and the child's wings flared violently in response. Amira's breath caught. The connection was stronger than ever. They were no longer just surviving, they were preparing. Together, human and dragon child, they would face the unknown, whatever it might be. Amira glanced at the Dragon King, then at the child, and whispered, "Whatever comes next, we'll be ready." The glowing wings of the child shimmered, casting light across the storm-drenched terrace. The palace, battered but standing, seemed to hold its breath. High above, the massive object continued its descent, pulsing with energy and intent. Amira's eyes narrowed, determination hardening in her chest. She did not know what awaited them, only that humans, through courage, intelligence, and unwavering resolve, had already proven they could change the course of fate. And in that moment, as the storm swirled around them and the child's glowing wings pulsed brighter than ever, the first sign of the coming adventure appeared. A mysterious beacon flickering from the alien object in orbit, signaling a challenge far beyond anything the palace had ever faced. Amira tightened her grip, ready for the next impossible battle.